Hello. Uh, Today we're going to look at DNS configuration or domain name services configuration in Windows 2008 R2 server. Now, for the purposes of this video, I have in fact already installed DNS Server as a role on my server. So if you look at roles, you will see that it is in fact installed. If you have not had it installed as yet on your server, you need to just click add roles, click next, and you would see DNS server would not have been installed as yet, so then you would just click the check mark and continue to install. Now in our DNS configuration, we will have our main server or our domain server as also functioning as a DNS server. So you will see that this server's name is KH server, and we have it also functioning as the DNS server for our domain. The DNS server consists of a couple of zones: our forward lookup zone and our reverse lookup zone. If you wanted to configure a new set of zones, you would right click on the server name, configure DNS server, and you would perhaps create a forward lookup zone and or create a forward and reverse lookup zone. But we've already done that, so there is no need to go further. Since my domain is called kh.com, we will see entries. All our DNS entries will exist in the kh.com folder in our forward lookup zone. There's also another folder, and this folder is actually created by default by Active Directory, and this also contains some configurations. But the ones that we will be working with will be the ones that exist currently in the kh.com folder. You will notice that we have created, in fact many of these would have been created by default. The first four: the start of authority, the name server, the current server. In fact, you would also notice that I have a second server that is on my network. This .11, now I haven't shown the name, so it pulls it the same as parent folder, but the domain controller .10 is showing up here as well. You will also see that there's a named version with host A that shows up with the actual name, as opposed to that generic option same as parent folder. We can also create, for example, if we have we want to make this server our web server, we can also create a CNAME or canonical name, and this will actually point back to our server, so that if we do a search for www.kh.com, it will resolve back to the server. And that is one of the beauties or one of the main functions of our DNS server setup. In our reverse lookup zone, in fact, before we go there, let's perhaps create a new host. So we'll create a new host, and in this case, I'm going to say if I had an account server, I would create, let's say, accounts.kh.com, and I would point this to the IP address of the existing server that I have, the additional server that I have. So I'm going to give it this address, and I'm also going to create a pointer record. in the reverse lookup zone. So I'm going to add host. So we'll see that it's here, and you will notice that this is pretty much the same as this one up here. Now let's look at our reverse lookup zone. You will notice that a couple of entries have been made in here. One, we have our start of authority. Two, we have our parent, which is the key each server. We can try creating a new pointer record, but I'm not sure that this will work. And the host name, we browse to and we will try this. Oh, okay, it did create it. So that is great. Let's try with another host. We have our XP machine, and this one is using a statically assigned IP address. So let's just go in and determine exactly what this address is. And we're seeing that our IP address is .14. So we're going to go into our DNS server, and we're going to create an entry for that XP machine. So we're going to create a new host, and I'm going to give it the name and the IP address. But in this case, I'm just going to allow it to do that without creating a pointer record, because you're going to do that manually. And if we go now to our reverse lookup zone, we're going to create a manual entry, a new pointer, and the host address in this case will be 14. So we're going to browse, and we're going to see the record that we just created here, WSXP, which is our XP machine. So we're linking them together, and we click OK, and we now have it in place. So let's go back to one of our hosts, and we will see exactly how this works. Now, if we ping our server, we should get a response. But we may not always remember the name, or sorry, the IP address of our server. We may much more easily remember the name of the server. So what if we did this? What if we gave it the name? What if we pinged the name? Notice here that the name was resolved by our DNS server to an IP address, and then it pinged that IP address. We can try that also for another machine on the network. Once again, you'll notice that our Windows 7 machine has an IP address of 21. So the DNS server was able to resolve that this name pointed to address 21 and therefore was able to send the ping request through. We can also try it for our account server. And you notice here, once again, we have a successful resolution. Now, one of the ways to resolve issues that might occur with your DNS server is to use the NS Lookup tool. So, if we right click on the server name, you will see an option here, Launch NS Lookup. And right away, we see that there is a problem on our server, a problem that has kept recurring and, to the best of my knowledge, seems to be pointing to our IP version 6 protocol. Even though we've disabled it, it continues to look to the IP version 6 address for DNS server. We have not set up a DNS server on the IP version 6 address, so therefore it is very likely to fail, as we see here. However, if we look up, let's say, www, which is one of the aliases that we gave, we notice here that the name is resolved, the address is resolved. That is the name of the server as well as the aliases that we see. Let's try accounts. Once again, we resolve the address to accounts.kh.com and we find the address. Let's try for one of the workstations on our network. And here we go again. We find that the name is resolved to an address. And this should also work the other way. So we see here that it resolves the name 192, it resolves the address 192.168.0.10 back to khserver.kh.com. If we were to go in and say, let's add, in addition to our web server, we wanted to add an application server, but we also wanted to run it on the same machine, we can create a new CNAME or canonical name, and we can say give it the name apps, and we point it back to our server. If we now look at that, notice that it is now able to resolve that to our server. So this concludes the demonstration of DNS server on Windows 2008 Server R2. Thank you very much for viewing.